He murdered his own brother, and it still wasn't enough to keep the throne. It took a wife's magic, a stolen eye, and 80 years of war between gods to decide who would rule Egypt. This is the true myth of Osiris, Isis, and Set. Osiris was Egypt's first king, the eldest son of the earth god Geb and the sky goddess Nut. Alongside his queen Isis, he turned a lawless land into a golden age. He taught Egypt agriculture, gave it written law, and ruled over decades of peace and abundance Egyptians would look back on for the rest of their history. Some accounts say he didn't stop at Egypt's borders. He traveled the known world for years, teaching distant nations how to farm and how to live under law, while Isis ruled wisely in his place. But his own brother, Set, god of chaos and the desert, watched that golden age with growing hatred. One night, Set's wife, Nephthys, disguised herself as Isis and seduced Osiris in the dark. And from that secret union, the jackal-headed god Anubis was born. It was a betrayal that pushed Set past whatever he could still forgive. And he began plotting his brother's death in secret, with 72 conspirators and a foreign queen at his side. Set built a plan disguised as a gift. He commissioned a magnificent chest, carved in gold and painted to fit one body perfectly, his brother's. At a grand banquet, with his 72 co-conspirators seated among the guests, Set announced a game. Whoever fit inside the chest exactly could keep it as a prize. One guest after another climbed in and failed, laughing until the room turned to Osiris. When the king finally lay down inside, it fit him to the inch. That was the moment Set had built the entire feast for. His men slammed the lid shut, sealed it with molten lead, and threw the coffin into the Nile before anyone could stop them. The current carried the coffin out to sea, all the way to the shores of Phoenicia, where it lodged inside the trunk of a young tamarisk tree. The tree grew around it within months, swallowing the coffin whole until a local king, drawn by the tree's strange fragrance, had it cut down and raised as a pillar in his own palace. With Osiris still sealed inside, Isis searched for her husband for years. She finally traced him to that palace, disguised as an old woman, and was taken in as a nursemaid to the king's infant son. At night, she tried to make the child immortal by holding him inside a sacred flame, until the queen walked in and screamed in horror. Isis revealed who she truly was, asked for nothing but the pillar, and the terrified royal family handed it over at once. She cut her husband's body free and carried it home to Egypt, hiding it deep in the marshes of the Nile Delta. While Isis searched for the herbs to revive him, Set found the body first, and this time he made sure his brother could never return whole. He tore it into 42 pieces, one for every province of Egypt, and scattered them the length of the land and into the river, so no fragment could ever be gathered twice. One piece was lost forever, swallowed by a fish in the Nile, which is why, to this day, that species was never eaten in ancient Egypt. For centuries afterward, town after town along the Nile claimed to hold one of those pieces. But it was the city of Abydos that became sacred above all, the place Egyptians would travel to for the rest of their history, believing they walked the very ground where their god had been buried. Isis refused to give up. With her sister Nephthys, and with Anubis guiding the search, she recovered every piece of Osiris's body but one. Anubis wrapped and preserved what remained, performing the very first embalming in Egyptian history, the ritual that would one day be used on every pharaoh who died. Isis then used her magic to bind her husband back together, transformed herself into a kite, a hawk-like bird, and hovered over his restored body until she conceived a son by him, Horus. Osiris was whole again, but incomplete enough that he could no longer rule the world of the living. Instead, he descended into the underworld and became its king, the first mummy and the eternal judge of the dead. Isis hid her infant son deep in the papyrus marshes of the Delta, raising him in secret, shielded by her own magic from Set's spies and assassins. Horus grew up in the reeds knowing exactly one thing: the throne of Egypt belonged to him by right, and one day he would take it back, whatever it cost him. The gods convened a tribunal to decide who should rule: Set, the usurper, or Horus, the rightful heir. The trial dragged on for 80 years. Isis intervened more than once. Disguised as a grieving widow, she told Set a story. A stranger had stolen her only son's inheritance while his father lay dead. Outraged, Set declared that no stranger should ever take a son's rightful inheritance. And the instant he said it, Isis transformed back into herself. Set had condemned his own claim to the throne out of his own mouth. Furious, he proposed one final contest. Both gods would become hippopotamuses and dive into the Nile, and whoever surfaced first would lose. Isis crafted a copper harpoon to help her son, but her first throw went wide and struck Horus by accident. Her second throw found its mark in Set until he cried out to his own sister for mercy, and she pulled the harpoon free and let him live. Horus surfaced from the water enraged, not at losing the contest, but at his mother's mercy toward the god who murdered his father. In a blind fury, he cut off Isis's head with his own blade. It took Thoth, god of wisdom, to recover it and restore her to life. Finally, the gods sent a message to the one judge no one could argue with: Osiris himself, ruling from the underworld. His answer was simple: the throne belonged to his son, and if the gods refused to honor that, he would send the dead themselves to collect what was owed. Faced with that warning, the tribunal ruled in Horus's favor. Set was cast out to rule the deserts and the storms beyond Egypt's borders, while Horus took the throne as king of the Nile, uniting the two lands under a single crown. His wounded eye was healed and became the Eye of Horus, a symbol of protection still recognized 5,000 years later. Osiris never returned to the living world, but every pharaoh who died was said to become him, judged in the very hall where his own body had once been made whole again. So tell me, if a betrayal like this happened in your own family, would you forgive it like Osiris did? Or fight for 80 years like Horus? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for the next myth from Echoes of History.